Cambridge.
We're talking about cost plans.
How tell me the credit earlier? Can you tell me the credit earlier? That's okay. That's okay.
So we're talking about cost plans and how cost plans come about.
There's a comment, sorry. Oh my God.
So when it comes to being able to determine the initial budget, right? I mean, they are normally done through cost plans, and typically these cost plans are prepared by quantity surveyors, right? So for those of us who will be QOSs, we'll be doing a lot of the cost plans. But then cost plans are estimates, like we did mention earlier on.
There's an initial estimate and then a detailed estimate. The initial estimate is for the design stages, and the detail is during the design stages.
Yeah, so, I mean, the cost estimate, that's varying. So what happens is that, what happens in cost estimate is that when you start, and let's say your drawings are, especially at the economic or feasibility studies, the variance is very wide. So if this is your actual or your ideal cost on target, right? When you start in, the variance between the actual and what you estimate, and especially at the feasibility stages, right? It's very wide because you have what very minimal details. Because you probably are just making use of conceptual drawings or schematic design. Or sometimes idea stage, oh, I probably want to do 1,000 square meter office building, and I think office building costs an average of £2,000 per square meter. So it's very, as you go on, when you get to feasibility, the gap closes, and then as you come right up to detailed design, right, it closes much more from maybe about 75% variance to somewhere around what 10% variance in terms of your cost estimate from your forecast to your actual. The actual cost is always at project completion. Even the contract, even though you may agree on a contract sum, most times that's not your actual or your final project sum, because as the project it's been delivered, changes do occur on the project, and it's normal most of the time, because I mean the client may come onto site and say, oh, I probably never thought of this, or there may be a change in technology you may want to incorporate. So the cost always vary from, I mean, it's wide at the lower end, and then when you progress, it gets better. So we require budgets, and I mean, cost accounting, absorption. We can skip the absorption. They are easy to understand. Right. So still talking about the cost estimate. Right. So when you're starting out, when you have your conceptual or you have the idea stage, normally you are quite off by a wide percentage, right? But as you progress during the design stage, your accuracy tends towards increases. You normally come maybe between plus or minus 10% of the actual contract sum. And then maybe once you sign the contract, usually, once at the time of signing the contract, if there are no major changes, normally your final cost of completion may go up to about plus or minus 5%. But that's usually not what happens, because changes do occur on a project most times. So the final cost normally varies quite widely. Right. And something you need to be conscious of, especially for those of you who will be practicing as quantity surveyors for contractors. The profit margins are quite small, are very, very small, right? So then when you are doing your estimate, right, assuming maybe you have a 10% margin on the entire budget, which is your profit, right? And while doing the estimate, you have a 5% error in estimating. It's most likely to affect your profit margin quite widely, right, by about 15%. Because don't forget that 5% error is not just on the profit, it's on just it's on the whole project cost. So as KOSs, when you're estimating, you need to make sure that your margin of error is very, very minimal. Right. So this is basically the cost process. I mean, when you go by the river plan of work, there are various costs. If you have your sketch outline, you normally come up with what the order of cost estimate, which makes use of the floor area or elemental or functional methods. As the design progresses, you come up with a formal cost plan, right? For those of you doing QS, you do a lot of this, I think in QX practice next semester or so. And then as you go to detailed design, you go to the pre-tender estimate, and then you come up with what the tender or contract sum. I mean, once a contractor, so once you have your detailed design, you can come up with your bills of quantity because the design is completed. You can really estimate the actual quantities. And based on that, you can come up with a fair idea of what the pre-tender estimate is, what a project is likely to cost you. But that doesn't mean that's what you deliver it at because you are not a contractor and you do not know the contractor's margin or profit. So the contractor at tender, once you submit your tender document and contractor's tender, that's when you come up with your tender or contract sum, where you negotiate the final contract sum by which the project will be delivered. And then we go on to the construction stage. So our interest here will really be on the order of cost estimate, right? We are assuming we are starting out and we want to know the budget for the project. So how do we estimate that? This is where our interest will be, because right at the very beginning, you want to be able to evaluate the different project alternatives to identify whether it will make profit or not. Right. And with the order of cost estimate, we go by the NRM document, which we talked about the other day. But then we make use of the NRM 1, which deals with order of cost estimation and cost planning for building works. Right. And basically provides us guidance when we want to do our initial cost estimation. It also provides guidance in terms of, because there are some items which are quite difficult to estimate. When we have preliminaries, overheads and profit, project team design, it varies, and then we also need to incorporate our risks allowances and inflation, but they do vary, right? There are three main, when it comes to cost estimation, right, there are three main methods you use. You have the floor area method, right, which basically, I mean, if you're doing a hotel, right, if you go to the BCI database, maybe they've done other hotels and can tell you maybe when it comes to hotel construction, the average cost is maybe £1,500 a square meter. When it comes to school construction, it's maybe £2,000 per square meter. So once you know your total floor area, you just multiply it by and get your total cost. And we have the functional unit area, where we look at the function of the building, right? So if you're building a hospital, right, maybe you have to come up with a total floor area, but you say, oh, I want to build a 1,000-bed hospital, right? If you go to the BCI database, it gives you an idea, okay, maybe they've built similar 1,000-bed hospital, or maybe they built other hospital and tells you the cost per unit bed is maybe £500 or £200. If it's, let's say, university accommodation, probably they tell you, I mean, the cost per unit bed is also so. And then you have the elemental cost method. We'll look at the order of cost estimate for the floor area method here. And when you go by the NRM2, it tells you that when you are doing an order of cost estimate, these are the main things you need to consider. I mean, this is a summary. You need to consider facilitating works, which may include demolition and stuff you need to do to get a site ready. The actual building works, you need to incorporate the main contractor's preliminaries. I've added the NRM 1 on the module page, right? So if you go to the module page, you see the NRM 1. And then, so if you go through this, you sort of have like, it tells you the various work items or elements you need to add. You have the project design, and then also you need to make an allowance for risk, right? Because risk is quite important. You are doing an estimate, so you want to know when it comes to risk, what you need to incorporate for the different people. There's also a column for inflation, which you need to add there, and then VAT as well. But VAT is quite complex, so you may want to let somebody with an accounting background help you in that. If you NRM 2.4 details, if you look on the NRM, it tells you all you need to know when it comes to so yeah, when I just copied it over here on the NRM, so it describes or gives you information for the different elements that are on there. So we'll just try to have a look at it and you know what to do. So hypothetically, or maybe, to be able to get the cost of building works by the NRM, all you have to do is to measure the gross internal floor area multiplied by what? The cost per square meter of that building works. Right. And then, but that's not the only thing. Like I did mention, you need to add what? Your project or design team fees. You also need to incorporate your planning permit. There are other fees you need to add as well when it comes to doing your estimate. Right. And then how do we get the average cost of construction? Right. This is where we have the BCIS database, which is one prime what we use. We also do have what the Spoons data, the Spoons book. I hope some of you know it. It's a book where they publish cost elements of average cost of prices rather than go through the BCIS. And then there are also magazines, and then if you're working for a consultant, the consultant always prices. So the contractor has what database of different projects. And then you could also make use of your own internal document. But then, because they are historical documents, right, when you go to the BCIS database, the information there is historical. It's normally based on, it could be 5 years past or 3 years past or 2 years. And then they also location specific, right? So you need to do what's called adjustment for time and location, right? You can project maybe 5 years into the future. For instance, if you want to estimate the cost of a project that starts in 5 years from now, the BCIS helps you to be able to project into the future, which is quite good in that regard. And basically, to do the calculation, what you do is just to say what the index. So at the date you are starting, what the index is there minus what it is now over the index at the earlier dates. The same for location as well. So for instance, if we do it, a recently returned tender suggested that the cost for building a grade A office, it's £900 per square meter. Right, that's the average cost of construction and office. What is the predicted cost per square meter after 1 year? Right, so if we were to build this office in 1 year's time, right, what would be the cost per square meter? Right. And it gives us that the tender price index now, it's what's 200, but then the forecast tender price after 1 year is what's £210. Right. Sorry?
I've just worked it out, sorry.
Okay. So we know, the index at the later date is what? When we want to, in 1 year's time, it's what's 210, right? And the index at the earlier date where it was tendered for is what's 200. But we know the formula, we've already estimated the formula, which was the index at what? The later date minus the earlier date over the current date, which is 10 over 200, which means that the price will increase by what? 5%. Right, which means the price will. So it basically, you have an index now. It's just like trying to find percentage increase. You know that in 1 year's time, the index will increase up towards 210, and you know the current value now. So all you're trying to do is to find a percentage increase by, which is 5%. So 5% multiplied by the 900 pounds would take us to what, 45 pounds. So in 1 year's time, the price of the building, the cost will be 945 pounds. Right, so we can adjust for location and time. Let's use this example for the BCIS. Calculate the projected cost for 1,000. So these are the key parameters. Our office space is what, 1,250 square meters, right? It's a 4-story air-conditioned office. And it should be tendered in what, 12 months' time in what, Oxford, right? So when we have such a problem, all we have to do is to go to the library, the university library, we go to the library, we select what average prices, expand. So let's just go systematically. Right, so when you go here, you go to find a database, and then built environment. So that's the BCIS database. We go to average prices, because if you the next step is to go to select average prices, right? But then we are interested in what's our building category? It's an office, right? It's an office. So we select 300, which is administrative. There are various categories there. You have utilities, industrial facilities, administrative. Our building is an office, so administrative, right? And then we do have county, local. So what we are interested in is we select what offices, right? Because it's not a mixed-use development. If it were to be mixed use where it was offices with shops, we would have selected 320.1. We close and apply. And then we go to rebates, date factor. When are we starting the project? 12 months from now, which means that should be Q4 next year. Right. Q4 in 2020. Right.
What's the index? Use index of, it says they use index something. Yeah?
No, I mean we're not using the index.
But what does that mean? What does that mean?
If you have an actual index, I mean sometimes if you go to some databases, you can have actual indexes, but then we just want to make use of the BCIs. We go to the location factor. Where Oxford is located in which region?
Southeast.
Southeast.
Midlands, right? Yeah, no, southeast.
Yeah.
Oxfordshire.
Yeah, if you check Southeast, that's
Oxfordshire.
so you just select Southeast. Yeah, and that's, so you have what different elements. You have general office 1 to 2 story, 3 to 5 story. This air conditioned and not air conditioned, but our building is what 4-story air conditioned, right? So that means we can select this. Let's go with the mean value. Right. So we just click. We click the mean value, but what we want is what order of cost estimate, right? So what this value shows is that the average cost of construction for offices ranges from 1,600, 1,500 from the minimum to what a maximum of 6,500, right? Based on your experience, you could decide which one to use. Maybe rather than go for the lower or higher end, let's go for an average figure, which is 2,182. But typically, depending on the office, based on experience, you get to know what to use. So I assume my average cost of construction is about 1,002. I go for the order of cost estimate. So what I would do here is to maybe enter my project title. The floor area here is what 1,250, right? External works. So here, based on the work you are doing, right, you could make an allowance for external work. If you are not sure, sometimes you could, depending on the size of it, it could be anything between 10 to 20%. But hypothetically, let's just assume an external work is £200,000. We are not making any adjustment because we've already done it before. Project design, what percentage do we allow for the design team?
Is it not 20%?
20?
No, 5.
Okay, so usually there's no fixed rate for the project team, but what happens is the bigger the project, the smaller the percentage. Right, and the smaller the project, the higher the percentage. But if you have, let's say, 10%, if you have 20% of 1 billion, right,
That's a lot, it's huge.
That's huge. That's about £200 million, which is quite a lot. But then if you have 10% of, let's say, 1 billion, that's about 100 million, right? So 5% is 50 million. But if the project is, let's say, 100,000, and you have 20% of 100,000, it's quite reasonable. So normally, when a project is quite small, you kind of make your percentage a bit higher. And when the project size is quite large and very major project, your percentage is reduced because you're able to make up for it in terms of the money. So that should serve as a guide. 20% is quite high, 5% may be low. So maybe most people try to go for anything between 8 to 12 on the average. So let's assume we go for 10%. Yeah. Other development other development, maybe you have like marketing, you have legal fees and stuff. So maybe let's assume all those are 10,000. Right. Let's assume we do not have any risks. We've not been able to estimate any risks on the project. So we're not adjusting for any inflation because we are starting next year, next quarter. So cost limits. Yeah. So once we do, all you have to do next is to download. And you have your order of cost estimate in terms of your budget figure for what this project may cost. Right. So it's quite simple going by the BCIS database. All you need to know is to get your average cost and then know your floor area and the sort of adjustments you need to do on there. And that's it. Hi. I hope I answered your question about the BCIS database.
Yeah, I've already enrolled on it, but my only problem is I've just put a thing in, temporary one. It doesn't give you the details, I was talking to you about. All it does is gives you the per meter, and it gives you a higher limit and a lower limit.
Yeah. Well,
I can understand every project is unique, and you price that in, and you're talking about the experience, but it's part of taking the advice of enrollment.
Okay, yeah, so I mean,
Yeah.
the BCIS does help in that regard.
Yeah, it just gives you a rough idea, where you are and to be competitive, I believe so.
Kind of, yeah. But the best form of information really is your own internal database, because it cannot tell you that use this value, because it's all about estimating, about being able to make the right judgment of what you're
Yeah.
doing.
I was more into, if this was a question that was brought up in the intensive study period, a bricklayer, how many bricks do you put in a day? I know, because I've done something, 600 bricks is the industry average. A plumber, how many meters of pipe? That's a...
Yeah, I mean, there's also another, there's another website that does that as well, in terms of your output averages.
Yeah.
If you go to planning,
Go. Yeah.
actually, let's finish out. I'll let you have it later.
Okay,
But there's
you go
another
for the-
website.
yeah,
If you
yeah.
go onto that website, it has like output for different work items within the UK, but that's specific for just the UK.
I think we'll appreciate it, especially the guys who are doing QS. If you send it by email, so appreciate
Okay.
that without what you said. Okay. Something like that, yeah.
So basically, once you're done with that, right, once you go with the order of cost estimate, I've also uploaded some Excel templates which you could, I mean, for those of you who may be interested in the Excel stuff, if you don't want to go through that, this template captures whatever it's on there, NRM, and once you input your figures, it updates it automatically. So, yeah, it's also on the database. And then there's one more which goes a bit further. That deals a bit with development appraisal, which will come on to, it tells you the profitability, whether your project is likely to be profitable or not, by making use of the residual valuation approach. Right.
Wait, sorry, where's this? Where's this?
Sorry?
Where is this spreadsheet on?
It's on Moodle. Yeah, it's on Moodle. So it's developers appraisal. It tells you, I mean, being estimating or determining whether your project is profitable or not from a residual valuation approach. Right.
Is there any specific method you want us to use in that project, or we are open to using different methods
Which project?
for project appraisal, the stadium
Coursework.
finances?
Of course, we're one.
Well, I'm sure that's no. I need to discuss with George, and I mean we need to discuss with George because George has been leading this model.
Hmm.
He's been leading this model, so I would want to talk to him before making any
That's a lot of
commitment.
fun for this.
So basically, I mean, once you are able to determine your budget, right, or what the cost of construction will be, the other thing is to assessing whether it's profitable or not, right, which comes in with the cash flow, right. Like I did, I mean, with the example we did on here, you realize that there were different areas, projects ends at different points in time. So you need to come in with a cash flow, which will, if you do the cash flow forecast or the cash flow projection, it helps you determine your IRR, internal rate of return. It can also help you determine your net present value as well. So you need to be able to estimate that. And also, the cash flows helps you to know when to bring in funding, right? If you're able to do your cash flow, it tells you if you're able to do your cash flow, right, it tells you what you need to pay. I mean, this is from a cash flow from a contractor's perspective, right? Not really, but then you need a cash flow from the contractor's perspective for you, the client, to be able to come up with your own cash flow. But for the contractor, it basically gives an idea of, the work the contractor would do and when the cash. So you have I mean, in month one, this is what a contractor expects to do, 25,000 worth of setting up. In February, the contractor will do excavation of 20,000. And then in March, the contractor will do what, excavation of 20,000 pounds, and then concrete, casting concrete in foundation of what, 37,000 pounds. So in March, the total value of work done by the contractor is what, 57,000. So you kind of do this, and then you also know the cash that will come in, the cash of 45,000. So once you do this from the contractor's perspective, you're able to have an idea of, at every point in time, how much you, the client, will need to pay the contractor at any point in time. And then also you're able to tell the bank that, okay, in the coming month, we will need maybe 200,000 pounds from you or 300,000 pounds from you. It helps you in terms of planning in that regard. And then also, once you know what the bank is giving you, you're also able to estimate your interest, right? Because for most banks, as and when they give you the money, the interest starts kicking in. Right? Once they give you the money, they start charging you some sort of interest. So you need to be able to do your cash flow and get to know what happens in there. So that's where the issue of, cash flow comes in. And when it comes to cash flow, there are some common mistakes. Your cash going out doesn't mean that you are getting cash in. You have a cash out and cash in. You need to know when the cash will go in back. When cash is coming in, it all depends on your planning and when you have money. So the contractors typically the clients may ask you to prepare a cash flow, but the client to rely on to be able to prepare his or her own cash flow to know when to pay you and when, to make money available.
Sorry, quick question. When a client wants to pay the contractor, surely it's based on a handover stage, maybe 2 to 3 payments. Why do you need to pay him in small amounts? Doesn't it depend on what type of contract you have? I don't know. Why would you need to pay at your? Do you know what I mean? Why are you paying him at?
I didn't understand.
No, that's a good question. I actually, but it's the time frame, isn't it? If it's a long time, then obviously you would want to have payments.
So someone is asking why the client want to pay the contractor in small bits.
Yeah,
why not maybe 2 or
sum?
3 lump sum?
Yeah.
No risk. long time.
Any help or anyone who can help before I come in?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It reduces the risk of exposure. And if it's a long time project, I better have my cash. If I'm a contractor, isn't it?
So typically projects, so typically projects can run over years. A project can run 3, 4, or 5 years, right? And the contractor, for most contractors, they sort of have a limited amount of cash themselves. Contractors are spread over 3, 4 projects. And the contractor is not the one supposed to finance your project for you. You have your project, you have your idea you want to execute. The contractor is there to do the actual project delivery execution. If you want to pay the contract, partly also depending on the contract mechanisms. But generally, when it comes to most contractors tend to be paid monthly because no contractor wants to lock up his or her capital in a project. If I get onto a project and I do so much, if the project runs, let's say, if the project is maybe 100 million running over 12 months, right? On the average, or maybe 120 million running over 12 months. On the average, I'm probably spending about 12 million a month, right, over this 12 months, right? And if I spend 12 million, why do I want to spend maybe 60 million up to month 6 before I get payment from the client? If I'm to be able to spend that 60 million, I need to go to the bank to negotiate loans.
Yeah.
I need to pay interest on those loans.
Yes, you're paying, you're losing, yeah.
So
You are losing because you're paying.
exactly, right. Which means if I have to do that, then you as the client, I need to bill you higher. I need to incorporate that as well.
Yeah.
You get it?
Yeah.
So the monthly or regular payments are done so that it helps the contractor in managing its cash flow. Because if you pay the contractor's amount or let's say debt that the contractor will go for from the bank, it's very minimal.
Okay.
You get
I get it now, I get it. It's clear to me now.
So basically, I mean, when you to do your cash flow, right? There are three main. The first step is what having your work breakdown structure. The next step is having your project or your Gantt chart, right, which tells you how long the project will run and what activity will be done at different stages, right? When concreting will be done, when the various activities, and then once you have that, you are able to come up with what the schedule of cash outflows and inflows. Which we'll take a diagram, we'll take one example and do that later on in the next lecture. So that's another example of a case study of a project whereby it's a small project, the guy wanted to do a single house with a liquor store on the ground and first floor. So in coming up with, let's say, the analysis of cash flow, basically try to visualize, do an estimated cost, and then what the duration will be, just the same old process, right? And then to come up with a schedule of costs, to determine the profitability of the project, you need to know your rental income. How much are you obtaining from that project? What will be your cost of construction? In that project, there will be what refurbishments, and then there will be what new build, right? And then also, for almost every project, there will be what external work as well, which you need to consider. And then you also need to pay the architect or the design fee. So if you go through the order of cost estimate, it helps you do that as well. And then once you do that, you do your spreadsheets. If you do your cash flow, what you realize is that most times at the very beginning, right up to project completion, it's always negative because you are always spending as a client. For the contractor, it's on and off. The contractor may get some income, but then for the client, you normally just spend right up to project completion before you start getting income. So you typically break even many years down the line or months down the line. But it's different if it's a residential development where you are selling rather than renting. You typically are able to make back your money right at the project completion. So you always need to know the project you are doing. Large and complex projects also basically follows the same principle, just that they are a lot more complex in terms of the commitment, financial commitment, right? So when it comes to the funding, it's usually a bit complex. So planning, it's usually complex. And then also when it comes to large projects, maybe you're projecting the life cycle, or let's say the life of the project to be 30 or 40 years, right? Which means whatever estimate or projections you make are always uncertain. Like we're talking about, your income. The future value of 30 years, it's uncertain because sometimes there could be some financial crisis 10 years down the line, which may affect whatever you get. So those projects are always quite complex. And then also it's quite hard to be able to get tenants who commit maybe for the whole life of the building. No tenants want to commit for 20 years because the tenants may not know what will happen in 20 years. Right? You may get one or two of them, but they may not be quite common. Right? And then issues of taxation as well. So basically, the budgeting also follows the same process as we said. And then you also need to consider community infrastructure levies, and then Section 106 if you are within the UK, where if you're doing some sort of development, you sometimes need to consider affordable housing or some sort of amenities which provide something for the community, right? So either you pay the levy or you provide some social amenities, right? So if you're doing your cost plan, you follow the same principles in terms of approximate cost plan, where tender pricing documents, stuff, and then cost control is something that's key, which we'll talk about later. You always need to monitor. Cost control is something you always need to do at both the design and construction stage. So at the design stage, you're making sure that whatever the architect is designing when it's priced or when it's tendered, it's what matches your budget. Because you don't want the architect to do a design that when at the time of pricing, it goes beyond your budget. And then during the construction, you need to monitor the cost to ensure that it sits within what's your budget. So basically, this has to do with project financing in terms of where you get your funding from, how you come up with your order of cost estimate. The actual evaluation in terms of discounted cash flow techniques, we'll do that later, and then we'll also do a case study example of portfolio analysis. So the discounted technique helps us when it comes to portfolio analysis, because that's where we do our cost benefit analysis in there. I think, yeah, that's it. You in the model page, you see quite a bit of stuff. I've quite a few. I've also added what's called a term sheet. I mean, for instance, if you go to the bank for money, they will typically give you what's a term sheet, the principal. So the term sheet will state the principal, the capital payment, the interest, and this kind of stuff, how long this. So I've added that as well. There's also a BCI tutorial. And then one thing, when you go into the model page on the very first, at the very front end, I've added software, Asta PowerPoint software installation, right? If you go through, if you click on that, you should be able to install the software. Maybe next week, we'll see if we could run through the Asta PowerPoint for the first 15 or 20 minutes.
We will be in a computer lab or will we be in
no, it will be difficult. If you have laptops, if you can install it before you come next week. That's not bad. I'm not sure I can get a computer, but I'll try. Thank you.